Hello. Before we even get started, let me just apologize if you hear screaming in the background of children. I live next to two parks. Both of them are currently occupied by children out on vacation. So just ignore that. It's happening. I can't stop it. I can't go out there and yell at them. It is a public park. So, sorry about that. But anyway, getting on to a book review. Finally, I have time to sit, record, and edit things. So, this is My Brother's Husband. My Brother's Husband is a really cute manga. And I gotta say, the fact that it's made by Gingoro Tagame is kind of insane because Google his name, you will probably find not safe search results things. Like, usually, he is the same mangaka who created, like, a whole slew of just gay men porno manga. And it's you know, there's a market for that. Like, it's not even, like, you can't even call it boys love, like, genre. I mean, you could, but really, generally, in my head, boys love manga is what it kind of, like, prettiness, but his is more kind of like manly men who are built and basis of like they actually have hair and stuff like that. It's a whole thing. So this same guy, the same guy who makes like really explicit gay porn, decided to make My Brother's Husband. And the reason he decided to make this was because he wanted to have the LGBTQIA plus community have more like of a relationship to non-LGBTQIA plus people, as in straight people. So that's the target audience of this book. This book is not really meant for people who are already LGBTQ per se. It's more of a like trying to convince straight people and conservative-minded people, I guess, that you know, LGBTQ people are just like you. They just love people and they want to get married to people that they love and things like that. This book, I was kind of nervous about it at first when I first heard about it because I was worried it was going to be one of those books that it has this love for an agenda and the characters and the plot line wouldn't be so great. But actually, this book is really freaking cute. I really enjoyed literally all of the characters in this. For those of you who don't know My Brother's Husband story, this is it. Yaichi is a work-at-home suburban dad in contemporary Tokyo, formerly married to Natsuki, father to their young daughter Kana. Now, Natsuki is kind of in the book, but a little bit later in this volume 1 part. I don't remember what chapter she comes in, but just way later. Basically, like, Yaichi and Kana are the two, like, central-ish characters, but also, their lives suddenly change with the arrival at their doorstep of hulking, affable Canadian named Mike Flanagan, who declares himself the widower of Yaichi's estranged gay twin, Ryoji. Mike is on a quest to explore Ryoji's past, and the family reluctantly but dutifully takes him in. Well, actually, Kana's all for it. It's actually just Yaichi who's like kind of he's hesitant about it because he has all these hang-ups about homosexuality at the beginning of the first 2 chapters. He's kind of thinking like, ugh, homo, gross. But then as he gets to know Mike, he starts to really understand him and he starts to really sympathize with him. And he sees that, oh, I've really misunderstood gay men and gay marriage and everything else. I've kind of had these thoughts before and I was really wrong. And it's just, yeah, so anyway, back to, I can't even get through the summary. I just really like this book. So, what follows is an unprecedented and heartbreaking look at the state of a largely still closeted Japanese gay culture, which is true, how it's been affected by the West, and how the next generation can change the preconceptions about it and prejudices against it. And it does a pretty good job. I was really worried that like the characters were just gonna be kind of like character cardboard cutout A, character cardboard cutout E, and we have no dimensions to us. But actually, Yaichi is an interesting character because he's a single dad. I gotta say, I can't remember the last time in manga or like in Japanese like literature where it was a single father. like, you can kind of understand his plights. Like, he's trying to raise a daughter, he's trying to do like everything good by her, but then he's realizing that, oh, I still have a lot to learn too. And it's his character development over the course of this whole manga, it's just really great. He comes to understand that he's got all these misconceptions, all these preconceived ideas, all these prejudices, and he's slowly learning through this personal interaction with Mike that a lot of the things he thought were true were not true, and a lot of the things that he, like, just in Japanese society in general. One of the things that stuck with me, this isn't really a spoiler, I guess, per se, but these characters are really believable, but especially Yaichi, because he talks about like aspects of Japanese culture and his childhood, and then also like growing up and, you know, becoming a dad and everything. Like, for him, there was, you know, this expectation in Japan, you know, we don't talk about this, we don't talk about these things. That's something I commonly hear from my gay Japanese friends. I have many gay Japanese friends, and many of them say the same thing, that growing up you didn't talk about it because it was assumed that you were straight, and it was assumed that if you weren't straight, we're still not going to talk about it. Basically, for most of Japanese history in the modern times, like post-Meiji era, it's basically been, we don't talk about this. And so Yaichi had the same problem. Ryoji came out to him because, you know, as one does when they're gay, and basically it was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then they never talked about it again because you don't talk about those things. And it was just really interesting to me. In that specific instance, I was like, this feels really believable because I've heard this story before. I've heard this in reality before. Many of my gay Japanese friends have said that they talked to their mothers, they talked to their fathers, and they said it was okay, but then they dropped the subject. Like, there was no, there was no heart to heart. There was no, you know, like, well, okay, is it okay? Is it really okay? Or if I end up coming home with a Japanese, you know, gay boyfriend or a foreign boyfriend, what's going to happen? Those topics never really got discussed. Nobody really talked about it. And so much of Japanese culture is unspoken. There's so many things, so many rules and things you have to learn, feeling the air. Like, it's just a lot of unspoken things in the culture, and that they talk about this in here. It talks a lot about it, about how there's all these assumptions and all these ideas about what is normal and what's heteronormative as acceptable versus gay, and what is considered unacceptable by default because it's gay. And it's just interesting. It's really interesting to get a look into the mindset of things when I've heard stories and then kind of seeing it play out in here. It's really interesting. And it is, the summary says heartbreaking. It's true. There are a lot of moments in here. Like, at first it's like, oh, happy-go-lucky fun, but then it gets real quick. There is some mourning in here about losing Ryoji, and oh boy, was just like, ooh, okay, my heart. I actually felt really bad for Mike Flanagan. He's a character, but I really felt bad for him because, like, he loved his husband, but he also had so many things he didn't know about his husband, because it feels like, it is also something unspoken, so I'm not sure, but it feels like as if Ryoji told stories about his childhood, but didn't really talk about much. Like, he didn't really, it seemed, to talk well about his childhood, or possibly talk kindly about his hometown much, because Mike is going there. Ryoji did not, like, go home for years. So there's a heartbreaking backstory to this, and there's a heartbreaking, like, kind of revelations about things that Yaichi comes to understand about how he might have fucked up in the past by not helping his gay brother, you know, in a town, small Japanese town, that is not welcoming with the gays so much. So, but also, okay, another part of this book I really liked. The environment and atmosphere of this book feels very Japanese, because there's nothing in this book where there's a definitive villain in the book. This is just like a going along with different stories about Mike and Yaichi and Kana all kind of figuring each other out. And it works really well. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of anti-conflict-ish, like, it's more or less an inter-conflict or anti, like, or society as kind of the antagonistic-ish force. Like, usually I'm not a big fan of these, but this book does it really well because it feels so true to Japan. Like, there's not really any one person in this book who's the enemy. Like, the enemy is just ideas. The enemy is just prejudice and ideas and discrimination. And how do you fight those? And the answer is, you really don't. You have to get to know somebody personally. You have to get into, you have to be able to ask the questions. You got to be able to talk to people. You got to be able to learn and unlearn many things from your past in order to understand, a lot of, different viewpoints and ideas that are different from your own culture and different from the ways that you've been, taught and grown up. Now, like, basically what I mean to say is that there's not, for example, in a lot of American TVs, like Hollywood movies, and this is something I didn't even realize until I got out of America. So much of, like, Hollywood movies is all about the villain and how there has to be this bad guy. And the bad guy is the guy that is an external force and we're going to defeat it. And when we defeat it, it's going to, like, save everything and we're good. Think literally anything in the past ever. Transformers. I love that series. It's trash, but I love it. But that's the idea, is that there's a villain. We defeat the villain. We save the world. All is well. But in this book, there's no villain. There's no bad guy to defeat. There's no biker, I don't know, some kind of like biker gang who comes in with homophobia that they have to defeat. There's none of that. There's instances of different people we meet who we kind of clash with a little bit and argue with, but what can you do? Like, in some instances, there's a couple instances in the book where they don't win. Like, they can't win. There's a couple of scenes in here. There's a gym scene in particular that I was like, ooh, I feel this. I have tattoos. And it was an instance about tattoos and gyms, and Kana, the daughter, we'll get into her in a second, but basically it was about how, why are they still anti-tattoo in gyms when most Yakuza, A, don't really have tattoos anymore all that much, and then 2, it's obvious that they're not criminals, they're just foreigners. So there was a lot of, like, there was a discussion about that, and they discussed it, but did they do a protest for it? No. Did they go up to the host lady at the gym and say how wrong it was? No. They just talked about how wrong it was, and that's really all they could do. And that's really all sometimes you can do. It's really realistic and reasonable in its expectations of what Mike and Yaichi are able to accomplish in their little tiny family household. And it's so intimate in that regard. It's so interconnected into family, and that's why I think it works. Maybe it's just the family dynamic. You feel like Yaichi's really a dad who's trying to have to, he's trying to teach his daughter, but he's also trying to, learn from his own past mistakes and grow up as his own person too. And then there's Kana, who I gotta say so far in this manga is kind of the weakest point of the manga. She is the kind of character I was kind of worried about when I got into this. She doesn't feel like a real child sometimes. Sometimes she feels basically just like a plot foil. Like, she asks a question and then Yaichi has to answer it, or Mike answers it, or something like that. Like, she kind of just pushes the questions out because she has no filter, because she's a child kind of thing. And, like, it's, like, played up like, oh, she's so innocent and she doesn't understand what's going on and stuff like that. And for me, yeah, sometimes it works, and then other times it's kind of clunky, and she doesn't feel real at certain points. Like, she kind of just feels like she exists. But to be fair to Kana, she's a better, like, developed character than a lot of other children in manga. Like, to be fair to her, yeah, she has moments where she basically feels just like a foil, but at the same time, there's countless other anime and manga adaptations of kids that are just absolutely terrible. I'm a teacher, so maybe it's just me, and I have taught kids, so I know how kids actually are, but, like, even still, like, it feels kind of real, but still not, for me, not 100% real. She just feels like she's there. And it's the author's idea of, you know, how kids act and like how a little girl acts. And he's not wrong, I guess. Kids do ask, you know, questions a lot. They ask a ton of questions. They never stop asking questions, and it's great. But at the same time, there are moments in here where she acts a little bit too innocent, a little bit too, like, cute. Like, you know, kids also get into trouble. Kids also, like, do bad things. And kids also will say things, like, hurtful without even meaning to. But she kind of manages to, like, dodge those kinds of things. And I don't know. It's like she's all the good things about being a child and none of the negative so much. And so for me, it just doesn't feel like she's quite as developed as she could be. Whereas Yaichi and Mike, they both have like their positive and negative traits, so you can kind of see like where they're coming from. Mike, at first, I thought he was just like a cute teddy bear, and then as time went on, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, he actually has thoughts of his own. And he's got his own stuff going on. So yeah, it's interesting. Like a whole lot of stuff about this is really interesting. Final thoughts about this. Really for me, this book, I think it's definitely like a 9 out of 10. I would give it a 10 out of 10, like if we're gonna do a scoring guide, but I gotta say that like certain aspects of the manga are a little bit clunky, like the Kana character, but then also just like the way chapters end sometimes, it makes me kind of jolt. Like, oh, okay, we're ending this. Okay, interesting. Like, it seems as if the author, Tagame. So it seems as if he is used to a serial format, so he knows he has to end it. But it feels like with this, like when he ends things, it's like, oh, this is the end. Okay, like there's not really a fade in and fade out kind of scenario with these things. Now, to be fair, it doesn't need to be that way for everybody, I guess. And you know, art's a different style thing. But for me, the way that the chapters end, it's kind of like ending a paragraph and then having no transitions into the next paragraph. It just kind of like stops, goes. So that's one of the things. Also, this is only volume 1, so I haven't read volume 2 yet. This is only the first volume, but Ryoji's kind of like a ghost figure, and that's probably on purpose, but I feel like he's not quite as present as I would like him to be. I would like to hear from, you know, like Ryoji somehow, either through a diary entry or something else about how he felt about being gay in Japan, because I feel like that's kind of a thing that's kind of necessary to talk about, but that's the thing. Like, this book, because it's made to like kind of get straight people to understand that gay people are not perverts, gay people are not crazy, like, come and see how very, very unfortunately normal we are. It kind of falters though in the aspect of like actually talking about gay experiences in Japan, and, you know, talking about how gay people have to deal with the day-to-day lives of usually like 90% of people I know. Sorry. 90% of the people I know stayed closeted in Japan until university or even after that, because many Japanese people stay with their parents if they go to a university close by, and that's considered fine. Sorry. So, yeah, in Japan, staying in the closet is kind of considered a default expectation for most gay people, lesbians, literally everybody, until you get out of university. And the trauma that comes with that is something that's only been recently kind of researching and talked about, and Japan's kind of coming to its own cultural revelation that, oh, this has kind of been hurting people. And it's, you know, every culture has to come to its own ideas about what's right and wrong. And Japan is, you know, Japan's getting there. It's always been, though, that we just don't talk about it. But the thing is when you say we don't talk about it, it's kind of considered, well, then it's negative by default. So, yeah. But anyway, so that's part of the problem with this book. Because it's aimed and it's targeted for straight people, the actual gay voice is kind of gone. So even though it's an LGBTQ friendly book, do I say it's like a gay literature book? You could make the argument for yes. You could make the argument it's pro LGBTQ. I will give it that. But is it like part of gay, like would I say put it into gay literature or like LGBTQ literature? That's not really my decision because this is not my country. But like if I was to say in America, not so much. I would say I would recommend people to read it, but would I put it in the category of that? Not terribly so. That's not to say that there's not a place though of this kind of literature in a society, and there's not a place for this kind of literature on your bookshelf. I still think it's a cute story. I still think it's adorable. Now, is it a social justicey warriory type of book? A little bit, but I think that it's one of those things that it's designed to be for a wider audience. It's not designed to be like one specific. Like it's not gung ho trying to be for one specific target. I think it's trying to spread its net as wide as possible so that there can be more acceptance and tolerance as possible. Like that's I think the goal of this book. And I think it does its goal well. I think it's a successful story. I think the characters are pretty well done. I think the environment is very, very reflective of Japan. It's not perfect, but nothing is. Everything is problematic, but it's really good. So that's my review. I don't know if that was a good job. I don't know what I'm doing, but I hope it was good. I hope you enjoyed the review. Yeah, so this is, My Brother's Husband. You can buy this literally anywhere. The Japanese version in Japan, you can get it at any bookstore, but also you can buy this online on Amazon, either in America or in Japan. Both is fine. But yeah, highly recommend. Do read it. Do go see it. Do read it. See it. Oh, well, actually, there is I want to say TV series or a TV movie based off of this. I wanted to see this before I did this review, but I just didn't have time. I believe it is available out there somewhere. And so I want to do a review about that in the near future. But I can't promise when or how that's going to happen. But yeah, so that is My Brother's Husband book review, and I'll see you guys very soon. I'm basically dedicating this whole week to doing reviews because that's what I want to do this week. So, see you guys in the next video. Probably going to be out tomorrow. Bye.